So how can I study? What is the optimal solution for studying these units? So basically what I would recommend is, like I've said before, I love this book, but now I can't find it. Give me 1 second. ASAP Human Geography. Honestly, this is always my optimal solution for studying the units of AP Human Geography. If you're really looking to review the content, this book is awesome. It's less than $10 on Amazon, and it's a book, so they're still doing deliveries. You can see it has tons of Okay, so my mic is having some serious issues today. I'm sorry. But I got myself back. This book is less than $10 on Amazon. It has tons of great information, but what this book doesn't give you is it doesn't give you any real-world examples. And how I could supplement that is if you use this book and you watch or Google or read the news every day, then basically you're going to be set for an FRQ style exam, because answering FRQs in AP Human Geography is all about describing something, discussing, giving an example. I mean, you're going to ask to be able to know something more than the definition of a vocab word. And I'm going to go into like my 4 greatest tips for studying these. So I think that they're going to be a really valuable resource. And I'm going to make these slides bigger and make myself smaller. So how to study for the exam this year. These are definitely credits to Amanda. Breathe. Practice self-care. We got this. So basically, if you're here watching this session at like 11 a.m. Central Time where I am in Dallas, or noon Eastern, like some of you might have just woke up, like I just woke up. So you really care about like doing well on this AP exam, or you really care about just doing well in general in school. You're trying to help your grades. I mean, you've got this. If you're here, like just breathe. Take a moment for yourself. Watch an episode of Grey's Anatomy on Netflix, 9 a.m. Pacific time. Whew, that's early. Whew. All right, so breathe. Give yourself a few episodes of Netflix to watch, and just make sure, besides studying, you're also giving yourself some free time. Oh, cool. So, one of the biggest things about the Human Geography about the Human Geography exam, especially since it's going to be FRQ, is vocab. So if you're only given 45 minutes to prove that you're ready to receive all of the qualifying credit for a college exam, you're going to want to show these AP readers that you really know what you're talking about. If you use vocab words, if you study these vocab words and you're able to use them in context, then you're going to be so well off for this exam, because this exam is really just about knowing what a vocab word means and what's an example of this vocab word and what does it mean in the context of today's society. So when you look at the vocab, that's going to set apart the people who get a 5 on this exam from the people who get a 3. If you know the vocab and you know how to use the vocab in your FRQs, that's what's really going to help you specifically for this year. This year, the vocab is going to be so important, more than just when we had multiple choice in previous years. Create a study schedule. Follow the study plan. That's honestly like a piece of advice that can go for every AP class. Like it can go throughout your high school and your college career. If you use an app, like in this whole online learning time, like I've been really stressed out with like when are my teacher's office hours, when is work due. So like I've literally set up a Google Calendar. I don't know if you guys can see my phone, that looks like this. Like there are so many events on here. Every stream that I have for 5 goals on here. Every office hour that I have to go to is on there. If you write everything down, or you get a calendar app and put everything you need to do to help yourself prep for the exam, what units you don't want to do. If you say, okay, I want to spend this week studying Unit 2, but then I want to spend next week studying Unit 5. Like if you create a schedule, that will help you so much more than just picking up a book whenever you have free time. Like if you make a schedule and you stick to it, then that will definitely set you apart. Practice FRQs. As most of you might know, this exam is 45 minutes online, FRQ only. If you're not practicing FRQs like sometime between now and the exam, like you need to. I put a little blue-green button right here that says Stream Fivable Page, and if you open that, if you're not already on the Fivable page and you scroll down, I put a link to all of the past AP Human Geography FRQs sorted by unit, and then it also has a short, like, 5-word description. So I actually want to go through an FRQ with you today, but practicing FRQs is going to be one of the biggest ways. You don't need to practice a lot of MCQ for this exam because there are no multiple choice questions. If you practice your writing and you practice your FRQ skills, then you're going to do better. You're just going to do better. And now I'm going to go through the official agenda. So basically with office hours, with Q&A, you guys are going to set the agenda for me. And that just means that we're going to answer your questions, and then I should want to go through like usually one unit or one overview of a big human geography concept a week. All right, so I'm going to get into the real content. But first, what I want to do. So the first thing I did was I had a poll here about which topic were you worst with, population or agriculture. So the least amount of you said population, which is what I kind of expected. Population's a little bit easier for most people. It's definitely not easy, but it's a little bit easier for most people. So I pulled one of those example FRQs from the page that I put on that little blue-green button at the bottom of the stream to show what an FRQ can look like. So this was the 2010 FRQ question 3 about population and migration. So basically the first thing that you want to look at when you see an FRQ, I can speculate, but I can almost guarantee you that you will see some kind of picture with a model or a population pyramid on it in this exam. Because if you're only going to get like 2 FRQs or you're going to get one really long FRQ, they have to give you some kind of like map or population pyramid or von Thunen's agricultural model. Like you're going to have to get some kind of model or picture before the question to show that like you can identify things as well as describe them. But that's just me speculating. We'll get real information on this tomorrow, April 3rd, hopefully tomorrow morning. Hopefully they don't wait till midnight, but you know, it's the College Board, so they do what they want. But here's this FRQ. So the first thing that I see when I look at this FRQ, boom, 2 big population pyramids. Usually population pyramids are some of the things that people struggle with the most in AP Human Geography. And with population pyramids, it's really just learning how to look at them and how to analyze them. So the one on the left, it looks really like a pyramid, right? It looks like a concave pyramid. It has like really curvy edges. So you can see that this one's really not going to be very far through the demographic transition model without even looking at the question. And then you can look at the second population pyramid. So you see that it's kind of like a rectangle with a few, you know, out perching sides, especially at the top, 75 plus, but there's not a lot of people between the ages of 0 and 10. You can see that that's one of the smallest areas right here, or not, maybe you're not able to see my mouse. This is one of the smallest areas right here. You can see that there's less kids than almost any other age category until you get to over 45. So before I even look at this, I can see that we're probably going to be comparing 2 population pyramids. I can see one that's early in the DTM, demographic transition model, and one that's later in the DTM, demographic transition model. Also something that I see when I look at this, in country A, it looks like there are more females and males in general, because if you look at the top, there's more in this category, and the females might be surviving longer, so you can see that there are more females in this age group too, where my mouse is, or even in this age group. So anything that's over 40, it looks like there are more females. So that's just something interesting to see. But then if you look at country B, you can see that there's a ton more females who are growing to be older. You can see that there's, you know, less females here, but more of them grow to be older. So maybe that's something that we can think of as a lens to look at all different types of population pyramids. So Mary in the chat says, even though there's not any countries now in stage 1, could there be a population pyramid question that's in stage 1? Well, I can answer your question with 99% certainty, but I can't say like exactly. I could say that with 99% certainty, I can say that there probably will not be a stage 1 population pyramid. And it will definitely not be a stage 1 population pyramid if it says country A, because all countries are above stage 1 now in population pyramids. So really, if they have stage 1 as an option and they say country A or country B, you're probably not going to pick stage 1. Now, they could pull like Amazonian tribe A, and then it would be a population stage 1 pyramid, but they probably won't do that. The College Board's not that mean. All right, so now we spent all this time looking at the population pyramids. Well, let's finally look at the question. So number 3 says, the population pyramid above represents 2 countries at different stages of the demographic transition and economic development. So that's exactly what we were looking at earlier. We related them to stages of the DTM, but then we could also see that they're economically developed. Maybe stages that are lower in the DTM, like 1 or 2, are going to be less economically developed, and stages like 4 and 5 are going to be more economically developed. So Maddie in the chat says, will we get any questions regarding stage 5? I heard Japan is sort of in that stage. So stage 5 is kind of weird, but there could be questions that are about stage 5 of the demographic transition model, because a lot of human geographer, the people who are real life, work for human geography companies that do GIS, GPS, things like that. Some of them will say that countries like Japan, Sweden, Norway, Greece, some of them even say Italy, are in stage 5 because they have more old people than young people. And the real thing about stage 5 is you just need to see that there's a big amount of people who are over the age of 65, and there are a small amount of people who are under 18. And that's really how you have to identify stage 5. So great question. So the population pyramids, if you see country A and B, you know that somehow you're going to have to compare them. So I see that a lot of questions just popped up. Rachel, I don't think you meant to spam the ask a question section, but that's okay. So you said, where's the last FRQ link? So if you go to the Stream 5 page and you scroll just below the box where I am, you can see that I put 2 links. One of them says AP Human Geography Study Guide, which is just like a guide that the cram has people created for you to look at. And then the next link next to it should be all AP Human Geography past FRQs, Rachel. So hopefully that helps you to answer your question. If it doesn't, put something in the chat at the end maybe. And once we're done with all of the content, we can go back into it. I'm going to try to get some of these questions out of the question section for a second so I can see some of the other ones. All right, so if you want to read through parts A, B, and C, try to think about how you would answer them. Like, don't write down a whole paragraph right now, but take a few seconds to look at, if it says describe a positive impact of each country's population structure, part B. So you could think about what are positive impacts that I could talk about for something that's high in the DTM or something that's low in the DTM. Or just think of negative impacts on an economic development of a country, for anything. All right. So instead of having you guys answer questions like in the chat or bringing you up on screen, I've learned in the past that doesn't work as well as doing this next method. But what I think works is reviewing sample responses. So every year the College Board publishes what students write on FRQs, and I like to go through them because it shows you, it gives you a chance to think about your handwriting, think about how you might label things. Like this student labeled it well because they wrote A, or they divided it here, they put an extra space before they talked about country B. It's just things you have to look at, like the formatting of stuff, making sure that you clearly label what parts of the FRQ you're going to be working on. So let's look at part A. So I want to try to grade this with you guys. So let's look at the question for part A. It's going to be worth 2 points, and the total FRQ is worth 6 points, so each of the parts is equally weighted. This one says, explain the demographic characteristics of each country above with respect to the demographic transition model. So we can go back to the question for a second, but we remember country A. Does anybody want to speculate right now, what stage country A or B might be in? You want to put it in the chat, say A, I'm about to type out an example for you. A, stage 10, which doesn't exist, but it's to show you. So I see stage 2 for A, stage 4 for B. I see a very common theme about country A is stage 2. So I think that we can all agree that country A is stage 2 right now. And most people think it's 4 for B. Maybe one person thinks that it's 3. But it's definitely somewhere like between 4 and 5, maybe. I think that we can come to that general consensus. But what did this person say? So this person said that country A is in more of a stage 2 because of the high number of children. Well, if we look back at the pyramid, large base, that means a high number of children. This means that they have passed stage 1 and discovered the medical revolution. However, the number of kids is disproportionately large compared to the number of adults, meaning they have not hit stage 3, where they are more informed about contraceptives and are experiencing female empowerment. So we can see big base, big number of infants, but then there's a big drop-off here. So there are kids with, in the human geography exam, you usually define infants between 0 and 4, but you define kids between 5 and 14. So you can see that between 0 and 4 and 5 and 9, you have this big drop-off, which means that the country is not yet that developed in healthcare, but they have some development already. So that person said country A. We all said stage 2 for country A. It looks like, I think that everybody actually said stage 2, so good job. It looks like that country might be in stage 2. But then this kid says country B is either in late stage 3 or early stage 4 because the population pyramid is really relatively even. The women have experience with contraceptives and are focusing on their careers rather than staying at home to take care of the kids. So what this person did is they said it was probably going to be an early stage 4. They said what stage 4 means for women and how they were more career focused than anything else. So somebody in the chat asked, what are contraceptives again? So you can Google that on your own time, but basically it's birth control, different methods of not creating children. All right, so now that we've looked at this and we kind of agree with their analysis of these population pyramids, let's look at what the AP readers in the rubric said that the countries were in. All right. So the AP rubric says that country A must mention stage 2, second or early expanding stage, and elaborate briefly on its characteristics, such as high birth rate, youthful population, developing country, etc. So the AP readers are saying here that it must be stage 2. And then in the next bullet point, they say it can't be stage 1 or stage 3. It can't be anything like that. It has to be stage 2. Has to. There's no getting around it. So they're being very picky with this one. So this person did say that it was stage 2, but the really thing that you have to look at when you're an AP reader or when you're answering a question, like you can look at it through these 2 different lenses, scales of analysis, think about it that way, back to unit 1. You can think, did they elaborate briefly on its characteristics? Did they use one of the examples or a better example that you can think of when they described country A, stage of the demographic transition model? Put in the chat if you think that they did the right thing when they elaborated. Put like, yes, they got the point from me, or no, they didn't. Okay, so it looks like you guys agree that they got the point for elaborating. And yes, I agree that they got the point for elaborating on country A. They didn't mention anything about developing countries, but they did say the number of kids is disproportionately large compared to the number of adults, and there are high numbers of children. So yes, if we were being nice, or maybe about like 60% of the time, they would get the point for that, because they did mention the youthful population. The number of kids is disproportionately large compared to adults, is what they said exactly. So they can get the point for country A. Let's move on to country B in the rubric. It says it must mention stage 4, fourth and final, and elaborate briefly about its characteristics such as low birth rate, low death rate, aging population, developed country, anything like that. But on this one, the AP readers say, you know what, maybe it's okay if they mention stage 5 because different geographers have different view on which one is the final stage. So back to your question, I think it was Maddie. you can mention stage 4 or stage 5 most of the time because there are discrepancies with different textbooks and stuff. You can see that stage 4 and stage 5 can often get confused. But let's look at their response. They say country is either in late stage 3 or early stage 4. Now, as a person who's taken and is taking multiple AP classes, I can tell you that this is the worst response you can ever give. Like, no offense to the student, but don't ever say or in your answer. Don't say late stage 3 or early stage 4. Pick one. Don't say both. Because the AP readers, at the top of every rubric, it says you are obligated to choose the answer that was first stated by the student. So technically, if I was an AP reader, and College Board is very specific about this, you have to take the answer that country B is in late stage 3. You can't say that because they mentioned stage 4 that they're right, their answer is late stage 3. But the rubric doesn't mention stage 3. That's just one of the picky things about writing FRQs. So you have to make sure you clearly answer the question. You have to make sure you don't give like, it's kind of this, but it's also kind of this. No, you have to answer the question. Make sure that you are answering the question fully. Don't try to give a second answer. Just give the answer. And then, so Michaela asked a really good question in the chat. So if you get the first part wrong, is the elaboration wrong too? In human geography and FRQs, yes. If you get the first part wrong, the elaboration is going to be wrong, because if you elaborate on your answer, but your answer was wrong, then you're really not going in the right direction to explain your answer well. So they can't really give you the point if you're not explaining the right thing. I hope that helped to answer your question. But Mary says, when answering the FRQ, should we try to expand on our answer or be more concise, or does it matter? So when you're answering the question, like when you say this country is in stage 4, you want to be concise with that. But in your explanation, you want to do a like 3 to 4 sentence explanation, or something that's in-depth explanation. You want to make sure that you're having examples, vocab words in your explanation. When you answer the question, like when you say the stage of the demographic transition model, you always want to say country B is in stage 4. You don't want to add a lot of extra words to that, like because the population pyramid is relatively even. You just want to say that. My strategy for writing FRQs, you say the answer. You say the answer. Then, after you say the answer, you can spend 3 or 4 sentences, 2, 3, 4 sentences explaining your answer. You can spend a few sentences explaining your answer with vocab words, with an example in real life. You can spend your time doing that, but you need to make sure you say the answer first, concisely, then you can explain. So a few more questions here. Okay, so should you answer full answer? So should your full answer be like a paragraph? Usually full answers, like on average, it's going to be about 4 sentences. So it could be like 3 sentences if it's like really long, like complex, compound sentences. But like make sure you're writing 3 or 4 sentences to answer questions that says explain, discuss. But if you're answering a question that just says identify, then you can write like 1 sentence. Just make sure you write it in full sentence format. Yes, paragraph style. Paragraph style. So there are 2 options for answering the FRQs. What this student did, I'll point it out here. What this student did is he just used A, and he just did it all in one big long paragraph style thing. But what I personally choose to do is I do A1, country A, and then I write down here A2, country B, just to, really make sure that the readers can see what I mean and where I'm answering each question. There's no question about what question I was answering. So Mango Tango, like that name, in the chat says, I don't think grammar matters, right? Okay, so this is a really interesting question to always answer. Technically, yes. Technically, no. This is not how you want to answer an FRQ like I'm answering this question. So they say that, like, if you spell the word disestablishmentarianism wrong, like, they're not going to count off. If you spell the word female empowerment or contraceptives wrong, they're not going to count off. But if you, like, write a sentence that doesn't have a subject and a verb, like you just say, in stage 3 or stage 4, like, that's grammar that they might be like, maybe the student doesn't fully understand the concept, like, maybe the student isn't really getting his point across. Like, if you say everything in complete sentences if you misspell maybe 1, 2, 3 words in your FRQ, you're going to be fine. But you need to make sure that you're using your best grammar. Just try to use your best judgment when you're answering a question. But if you misspell a few words, it's okay. They're not going to kill you. They're not going to take off your score. So Maddie says, what things should not do when you write an answer? Don't ramble. Don't contradict yourself. Do not contradict yourself. Do not say country B is in stage 4, but then at the bottom say, well, they could also be in stage 3 if you ask some people. Don't do that. Get your point across and then explain with examples, but don't contradict yourself. So answer your question. Give an example. Elaborate with some vocab words. Done. Don't contradict yourself. Don't try to answer it another way at the end. If you want to change your answer, you cross out that whole thing. Like, you don't scribble it, but just like draw a few lines through it in your pen, or you're typing this online, so I guess you can just delete it. But like when you're writing FRQs, just like scratch your pen through it and make sure like you're using the right grammar and make sure you're using the right words. So this is something that I actually see a lot in human geography. I know people in my class who have 7-sentence paragraphs and fill 2 pages for an FRQ while I only use 1 page. So the length of your FRQ doesn't really matter. Like, as long as you're answering the question and getting your point across, you really don't need to fill up 2 pages. Like, if you're writing an answer to 2 questions, 2 pages is not really going to be necessary. Like, you really only need 1 page. You don't need to make sure that you don't need 2 pages full of FRQs. If you answer the question and you make sure that you use an example and you use vocab words, you're going to be fine. Answer the question, use an example, use vocab words. You'll be fine. You don't need to give 3 examples when the question asks for 1. The AP readers can only grade what the question asks you. So Maddie says, what about counter arguments? You don't need okay, so to define what counter arguments are, counter argument is basically saying some people might say that this is in stage 3, but it's not because da 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 da. Don't need to say that, because then you're just rambling on. You just need to give your answer, be concise. Then you need to give examples. You can be a little bit wordy here. Use your vocab words. Then just say, maybe you can repeat your topic sentence like this country is in stage 4, period. You're done. Like, you, for FRQs, this is not writing an AP English lang and composition synthesis essay. Like, you don't need to give counter arguments, and you don't need to add extra call to actions and hooks. Like, no, you answer the question, you give an example, you use some vocab words in that example, and then you're done. Like, don't go on for too long, or the AP readers will get bored. Because if you really think about it, especially this year, an AP reader is staring at a computer screen for 9 hours a day, reading the exact same FRQ over and over and over and over again. The same AP reader will read this FRQ and score it like at least 100 times a day. Like, you read 100 FRQs a day as an AP reader. And if you're writing like a counter argument and a hook and a call to action and all these other literary devices like that you don't need in an FRQ, like, they're going to get bored and they're just going to stop reading your FRQ. Like, they're not going to care about your answer anymore because you've been going on for so long. You just want to make sure you're clear, concise, to the point, but still using examples and making sure that you're defending your answer. All right, so grading part B. This one did not work like I hoped it would. I am sorry. Oh, well, that's okay. So we'll just go through part B a little quicker then. This one says, discuss 1 positive impact on each country's population structure. 1 second for water. Hydration is very important right now. Make sure you're drinking water when you're at home. A lot of you won't think about it, but you can get dehydrated so easy when you sit inside, looking at a computer, doing online school all day. Drink water. All right. So this student said, 1 positive impact of country's age population structure is that when the kids get older, there will be a large number of people for the workforce and military, which will strengthen the country's economic and military power. So let's just go look at the rubric immediately. So the rubric says country A, a positive impact can be an expanding or large workforce, useful population, less need for immigrant or labor, less need for elder social security. So looking at the rubric, looking at their answer, they said large number of people will enter the workforce later in life. Boom, that's the first example from the rubric. Would you guys give them the point for that? Respond yes or no in the chat. Yeah, okay. This one's pretty straightforward. You're going to give them the point. What they said is almost exactly on the rubric, like exact same words, all good. So this one says, one positive impact for country B is that the rate of natural increase is pretty level, but will not start dropping because of demographic and then demographic momentum. Also, the dependency ratio is pretty even. So again, this person was not concise in their answer. They gave like a second answer at the end, but because of my stupid pointer and laptop, it's being covered up every time I move. They say also the dependency ratio is pretty even at the end of their answer. Like they added a second answer. Don't do that. Learn from the student's mistakes. And then somebody in the chat asked, Harrison, do you say the positive impact or would you need to explain it? So because the verb at the beginning of this FRQ is discussed, you need to use one or two sentences to explain it. I mean, make sure you're using an example or make sure you're giving details about what you're saying. If it just says identify, that's where you just state your answer. But if it says discuss, explain, give an example, defend your answer, that's when you need to use examples, multiple sentences, stuff like that. So back to this FRQ. So I really chose this FRQ as providing an example for what not to do if you haven't noticed already. But this person said, one positive impact for country B is that the rate of natural increase is pretty level. Let's look at the rubric. The rubric says educated workforce, low dependency ratio, youth dependency ratio, more women in compensated workforce, tendency to spend discretionary income, might need immigrant labor, which will allow for people to take higher order jobs, blah, blah, blah. But remember, you have to grade the first response that a student gives. That's why you don't need to give 2 responses. You don't need to give 3 responses to make yourself safe. The AP reader will only grade your first response. The AP reader isn't going to care what you wrote in that last sentence. Also, the dependency ratio is pretty even. No. And why wasn't the rate of natural increase being level in the rubric? Can anybody tell me why this person isn't going to get the point in the chat? Can anybody tell me? Something that I've been stressing this whole time. What did this person not do well? What did this person not do? Because it's vague, thinks it can be a benefit or the negative for the U.S. You guys are getting close. Every person who's answering is getting closer. Contradicted herself. Yeah, he contradicted themselves, but that's not what I'm looking for. Why is the answer that the rate of natural increase is pretty level on the rubric? Go read the question again if you need to. But tell me, why is their answer, even though it's kind of an answer for a positive impact, why is it not on the rubric? Yes! Good job, Mango Tango. You get a gold star from me. Here, let me find my sticker sheet. You can have a colorful sticker through the internet. Here you go. All right. Because the question talks about economic development. The person didn't answer the question. The person talked about a rate of natural increase, which is like a social measure of development. But this question is asking about economics. This person isn't answering the question that was asked. So they did 2 things wrong. They didn't answer the question and they contradicted themselves. So, in summary, for part B, they got the point for part A, but they didn't get the point for country B. So we've gotten 1 point on part A so far and 1 point on part B. So they've gotten half the points so far. And on an FRQ, that's not awful. Like, you want to be getting about 75% of the points possible. Or if you're getting 100% of the points possible, that's awesome. But you need to be getting 75% of the points possible to make sure you're getting like a 5, a really good score. So to part C. This one is a really long response. I'm not going to read it to you. If you can see my PowerPoint well enough, try reading it to yourself right now, because that's a lot of words. I'll give you like 60 seconds to read that. When you're done reading, say something in the chat. Yeah, that is a big paragraph. That's why I'm not reading it to you. Abby is a fast reader. Maybe Abby's the fastest reader here. Maybe we need to have a competition later. We'll see. But Okay, so as most of you are starting to finish and reading this paragraph, I'm going to start talking a little bit. If you're not done reading, keep reading. All right. So as everything that I do in this stream, there's a point to me doing it. There's a reason why I had to read this FRQ. When I talked about how AP readers spend 9 hours a day reading the same FRQ, this is that one person that you were talking about, I think it was Mango Tango, who said, the kids in my class are all writing 7-sentence paragraphs. Yeah, Mango Tango. 7-sentence paragraphs and fill 2 pages. This is that person right here. This person in part C is saying way too much on their second example. So they use this much space for country A, but then when we get down to country B, they use like triple that space. If I was an AP grader reading this FRQ, I would literally want to jab my eyes out. Like, most kids' FRQs that get 2 points will probably be half the size of this. Like, that one's that long, it's probably going to be this long. Like, I want it to be clear and concise, but still answer the question and give examples. Like, this is a little too much for answering the question. But, you know, if they got the point across, then they're good. But that's my point. You guys took a few minutes to read this. Imagine if you had a minute to grade one of these. If you were an AP reader and you had a minute to grade this whole thing. Like, I could barely read this in 60 seconds, much less match answers to the rubric. Like, make sure you're clear and concise answering the question, but also giving examples. Like, there's a happy medium there that you guys can get by practicing writing FRQs. There is a happy medium. Also, we have all sorts of technology in today's world. We have phones, we have FaceTime, we have Zoom, we have Crowdcast. We have all of these wonderful platforms that like we can use. And if you practice writing FRQs with your friends and you like trade and grade, like send each other pictures, like text each other messages about like your FRQs or something, or you work together on one, like that'll help see like, oh, he wrote a lot and I gave him all the points, but I wrote half of that and I still got all the points. Like, there's a happy medium there. Like, make sure you're writing just enough. Like, you want it to be the Goldilocks. You don't want it to be way too long. You don't want it to be way too short. You want it to be just in the middle, like just the warm porridge that everybody loves to eat, even if you don't eat porridge, but that's okay. So back to AP Human Geography, now that I'm sure that you're all done reading. So C. Discuss one negative impact of each country's population structure on its economic development. So remember, this question has to answer economic development. So keep that in mind as you're reading. Keep that in mind after you've read this, like, what did they say? So now, just in the interest of time, because we've already spent 40 minutes grading FRQs, I'm going to pull up the rubric. So the rubric says that country A can have a high youth dependency ratio, strain on resources, the environment, low literacy rate for women, fewer women in the workforce. But what did they say? They said that there are not many, that if there are many kids, and these kids decide to have kids, the population will increase dramatically and the country will surpass its carrying capacity. So they kind of went a little bit too far here, but they did answer the question. A high youth dependency ratio is when people keep deciding to have more and more kids, when each kid has 2 more kids, and that those 2 kids each have 2 more kids, and you have an exponential population growth, which is not going to be good for a country. So that person really, I personally think, got the point for high youth dependency ratio, but do you guys? Knowing that you could interpret youth dependency ratio as having many kids, and then those many kids having many kids, just put like Y in if you think that they did or did not get the point in the comments. Okay. I don't know if mine's just not syncing or something, but I'm going to say for right now that they got the point for youth dependency ratio. Can you guys say something in the chat? Because I don't think that mine is syncing. Can you guys say something in the chat? Like, just type like hello, because I don't think that mine is working right now. Hello? You guys see my message? Hey. Can you guys please say something in the chat? Uh-oh. This is not good. Okay, well, I'm just going to keep going. Hopefully you guys can hear me and see me. I hope so. I would say something, but I don't think you guys can. So I'll just keep moving. All right. So for country B, this person said, one negative effect of country B's population is that women will continue to not have babies. The population will keep decreasing, the death rate will surpass the birth rate in the future, and then there will be less workforce, and there will be less candidates. And then this person goes on to say, if this were the US, there would be too many old people. Like, they gave like 2 examples, and they elaborated on those examples. You really don't need to be elaborating on all of your examples. You need to make sure that you have the example, but that you're making sure. Oh, woo, okay, I'm getting chats. Hello, yes. Yay. Okay. So Mango Tango, I don't think you got the point. Well, I think that he did, so we can agree to disagree. You know, I'm going to be a little generous right now. And then Mary said, did that person ramble, or would that be an acceptable length? It's a little rambling, like ending it like around here would be an acceptable length. The person didn't need anything after if the country was a US. Like that person, oh, okay, good. All my chats are coming in. Yay, my Wi-Fi isn't crashing. Okay. Did that person ramble, or is that acceptable length? Like around here. They could have ended it here, and that would have been an acceptable length. Anything past here is like a little rambling. And then Brittany says, would you got more points? Sound better if you say kids to youth? I mean, no, that's that thing with like grammar. Again, your grammar doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be the most sophisticated essay you've ever written. As long as you answer the question and get your points across, then yeah, you're good. He contradicted himself again. Yeah, kind of a little bit, but like not a lot. Like he answered the question like correctly the first time. You don't want to contradict yourself. That's like one of the biggest takeaways from this. Maddie says, this is a representation of the person grading the response. Like this is me and you guys grading the responses together. Like I'm showing you what an AP reader is going to be looking for in your FRQs. What I'm trying to teach you with this is like showing you what you should write in your FRQs, what you shouldn't, and like how these readers are going to be looking at your FRQs in June when you write them on whatever day our exam is going to be. Like what I'm trying to show you is how to, like not how to write a good FRQ, but what good FRQs look like, what bad FRQs look like, and some tips on what you should and shouldn't do. Okay, so I hope that you guys can hear me. I'm getting chats now, so everything's back to normal. So back to this. So this person talked about having a birth rate that will the death rate surpass it. There'll be less people in the workforce. So possible future labor shortages. Type like yes in the chat if you think that they got the point, no if you didn't. I think that this one should be a little bit more straightforward for you guys. Anybody else have an opinion on whether or not they got the point? Okay, so I have one yes. So I have two yeses. Okay, so 3 yeses and 2 not reallys. So I'm going to go with the majority here and say yes, because honestly, looking at this part of their FRQ was showing that like sometimes AP readers have a difference of opinions, right? Some people say yes, some people might say no. But there are people who are there are at least 2 people who will look over your FRQ. One of them will be grading it like we are, and then one of them will be looking over the graders, like highlighting, like if they actually did the right thing on the rubric, or if they're like just trying to give everybody the points or not give everybody the points. So there will be 2 people who look at your FRQ. So there will be somebody who's fighting for you to get the points after somebody has already graded your FRQ. So somebody asked, when answering the question, do you have to hit all the bullet points, or can it just be like 1 or 2? So these AP rubrics that I'm looking at right here are written after everybody writes the FRQ. There's like a person who goes in and scans all these FRQs in, and like if he sees like one common word, like that'll be on the rubric. When it asks for one negative impact, you only need to hit one of these bullet points to get the point. Like the point is that you should only, match one of these bullet points. You shouldn't really have to make sure that you have, like, you're hitting all 3 bullet points. Like, there's no way that ahead of time you could predict that these are going to be the 3 bullet points on the rubric. Like, there's no way. Like, even if you hacked College Board system, you saw, like, an internal memo about what they're looking for, like, there's no way you could hit all 3 bullet points. Like, you need to hit one. And that's what I say. You need to have a clear, concise answer that is going to be one of the bullet points or very similar to one of the bullet points. And yes, one is in all caps in the question. So, in summary, I think that they got 2 points on this one and then 2 points in total on the previous part A and B. So that gives them a total of 4 out of 6, which is not bad. But I'm going to look at what the real AP readers say that they got on this FRQ. So they say that they got a 4. You can read this paragraph, but that's basically like what we did. We talked about why they got some of the points, why they didn't get some of the points. So they say 1 point in part A, 1 point in part B, and 2 points in part C, like what I said. So this person got a 4 out of 6, which isn't bad on a normal AP exam. But on this online FRQ only exam, you're going to be fighting to try to get all of the points in these FRQs. Like, if you don't know what a question's asking, throw vocab words from the unit at the FRQ and try to answer the question at the same time, but just like start using vocab words that like can relate to the prompt. So if we only get one FRQ, we got to get all of them. No, not really, Mango Tango. Like, there's a sliding scale for like a certain number of people will get a 5. So even if everybody fails the FRQ, like some people will still get a 5, some people will still get a 4. Even if everybody fails the FRQ, like they have safeguards in place. But the average score on this FRQ was about a 2.5. So this person actually did better than average. Like, this person did pretty good on their FRQ. There are 6 points total possible. They got 4. Like, that's not bad. Like, 4 out of 6 is like 2 out of 3. That's like 2/3 of the points. Not bad. Like, you really have to think about all of this in context. Like, if this person can only get 4 out of 6 of the points and explain, like, they tried to explain in that much detail, or like they tried to use specific examples. Like, think about what somebody who walks into the exam and doesn't know what the FRQ is asking. Like, there will be people who don't know the specific topic of the FRQ, and there will be people who know it so well. Like, you just want to be on the know it well side or like in the happy medium. So Brittany says, what did you get on the exam? So that's not rude. No, I don't mind sharing if you ask. I did get a 5 on the exam. My year was pretty hard, so I feel like they gave a few more 5s, but a third of people got a 1 on the exam last year. Like, I think it was 34% of people who took the AP Human Geography exam last year got a 1, and that was like devastating to some people. Like, it was, yikes is right. Yikes is definitely right. But I think that it was just because human geography is becoming more of people's first AP classes. And so a lot of people are going to walk into that exam unprepared with just trying to review their class notes like once for the exam and thinking that that's going to get them a 5. But a lot of freshmen, this is their first exam. Most of you guys might be freshmen, and most of you might this be your first AP exam. So you don't really know like everything. You've never sat in a room with an AP exam before, or at least a normal AP exam. So it's a learning experience for a lot of people, which is why a lot of people don't do well on this exam. But some people watch these 5 full reviews. Some people do try really hard to make sure that they're really getting the content by buying an ASAP book or like a Barron's book. Some people buy too many books and then realize that they don't need all of that money wasted. But, it's a lot of people's learning curve, this class. I mean, you guys, this isn't going to be your learning curve because if you're here, you're doing something right. If you're coming to this and using an hour of time that you should be using on schoolwork that you could just be getting done, like, you're doing something right to help prepare. Somebody asked, do I do the study plan that you provided? You guys can just look over that, read through that. It's not really a certain plan. It's not a schedule. It's just like an explanation of like what some of those things are on the cram pass. Like, it has some extra resources for things that you're unsure of, but I do want to get into a little bit of content right now. So I think that it was Tiffany. I hope that she's still here. Hopefully. I don't see if Tiffany's still here or not. Uh-oh. That's not good. So I'll try to answer her question with a little bit less depth then. But no, this is not what I wanted to talk about. Perfect. Political geography. So Tiffany asked, how can functional, operational, positional, and territorial disputes be differentiated? So basically, I've defined all of the different types of boundary disputes here. So definitional is basically saying the language of this contract about the border agreement is really unclear. Like, I think that the border's here when it's really not. So that could be like between South Korea and North Korea. Basically, like, they disagree on where the border is. So they kind of have this demilitarized zone, DMZ. It's kind of cool, but also kind of really scary that you can Google, watch a video on YouTube about. And it's kind of interesting, that boundary dispute. So locational. Locational is dispute over where a boundary is placed. So a long time ago, the Mexican-American War, if you've ever heard of it. So when Texas was its own independent state and it wanted to join the U.S., Mexico got really upset because Texas used to be owned by Mexico, who used to be owned by Spain. Like, it was a big, complex relationship. So there was a big locational boundary dispute. So the Texans, the U.S., the Texans, the people who wanted the Republic of Texas, thought that this boundary should be at the Rio Grande River between the U.S. and Mexico, or Texas and Mexico at the time. But the Mexicans and the Spanish thought the boundary should be, I think it was 30 miles north of the Rio Grande River. Like, they thought that it should be farther north so they could get a few more major cities and the Hidalgo Valley. But they basically fought a war over a locational boundary dispute between the U.S. and Mexico. Operational boundary dispute over the management of a boundary, trade, and immigration. So an operational boundary dispute could be a few years ago, California and the U.S. government had a really short, brief dispute over the immigration policies for asylum seekers. So they thought that immigrants from Mexico should be able to come to the U.S. So the Californians thought that a few years ago, asylum seekers from Mexico should be allowed entry into the U.S., but the federal government thought that the boundary should be used to only allow asylum seekers after their application has been processed and approved. So usually when you think of operational, you can think of immigration. And allocational is one of the most common boundary disputes, and it happens all the time in the world. It's about who owns the resources on a boundary. So in the Middle East, like, I can't really show you the map that I'm looking at right now above my desk, but between Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, Iran, they all think that they own the oil in the Arabian Sea and the Red Sea. Like, they all think that they have claims to all of the natural fossil fuels there. Like, they fight wars in the Middle East over that besides the religion aspect. They fight wars over who gets the oil, who gets the coal, who gets the natural gas, who gets all those resources. I want it. No, I want it. No, I want it. Like, there are fights over that all the time. Allocational boundary disputes are some of the most common that you see in the world, where the resources on a border go. Also, back to Texas and California and Mexico, the Rio Grande River. So the Rio Grande is going to have water that people can drink. So the U.S. and Mexico can fight over who gets that water, how much of it goes to Mexico, how much of that water from the Rio Grande goes to the U.S., how much from the Colorado River goes to the U.S. Well, most of it's in the U.S., so I don't know. What did the Mexicans think? Like, boundary disputes are a complex thing, and that's why there are 4 different types of them. You have to know. And honestly, I can say that this probably won't be an AP exam FRQ topic, but there's still a chance that it might. And then how do people solve boundary disputes? Supernationalism. So people can solve these with things like the UN, EU, OPEC, NATO, IMF. So I'm really going to talk about one of them right now, OPEC, the Oil and Petroleum Exporting Countries Organization. Or no, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. There we go. OPEC was created in the Middle East to make sure that people all have a fair say in who gets what oil and who is the person who controls the prices and the selling of it. If a supranational organization is basically when a bunch of countries band together and say, we're forming an organization so we can be superior to everybody else and we will have this power together. So basically, this dispute was that we want oil to be sold at a fair price. So many countries, not including the US, by the way, in the Middle East and Russia and China, joined OPEC to try to make the prices of oil fair, which is one of the economic reasons for supranationalism if you keep reading on the slide. So great question, Tiffany. I'm sorry you weren't here to see it. So I'll try to answer a few more questions right now, but... So somebody asked, how can we go about studying examples to use on our FRQs? Basically, honestly, read this book. It has some examples, just not a lot. Read that book, watch the news. Those are some of my biggest examples. Read the book, watch the news. That's how you get examples for human AP geography FRQs. So Brittany asked in the comment, did you decide to keep doing the fake news? So fake news is going to be a separate stream soon. I think it's going to be called headlines or something because we didn't really like the idea of calling it fake news. But it's, I think there's going to be a stream. What is it? Oh my gosh. Not next Thursday, but in 2 Thursdays at 2 p.m. Eastern time. I think that there is a stream, and I think it's going to be called headlines. And I think we're setting it up and programming it into our system right now, but you might see it in a few days. So just look at the AP Human Geography stream page. If you don't know what that is, I don't really have a lot of time to explain it right now because I only have like a few more minutes left since I've already taken an hour of y'all guys' time, but making sure that I can answer that. Somebody asked, can we review the different rural land uses? Sure. All right. So does anybody know what this model is called really quickly in the comments? The one in the top right part of my screen. Von Thunen model, yes. That is the Von Thunen model about agricultural land use. So basically, in the center, you have the urban area, the market of the city. And then as you go out, you have less perishable things. So the farthest away is going to be ranching and livestock. Usually, cows need a lot of space to grow, so they have to have the biggest space, the biggest outer circle. Then as you're close to the city, you have dairy farming. Dairy, things like milk, they don't stay outside of a refrigerator for a long time, so they have to be close to the market to be sold quickly. Forest, you need these trees to be close so you can chop them down and sell that lumber, sell that wood to keep the fire and the heat going in the market center. Because remember, this model was made in the early 1900s, so it's not like they had a ton of electricity and things like refrigerators. So this was how most old agricultural societies were created. And also for forest, timber, wood, it's all really heavy to carry, and they didn't have a lot of big, giant 18-wheeler trucks in the 1900s to carry this. And then you also have grains and field cropping. And basically, the reasoning for that was they need a little bit less space to grow grains than they do for cows to graze and stuff. So they get one of the smaller circles, but it's still far away to where more important things can be close to the city center. But basically, pasta, wheat, bread, that stuff doesn't really go bad. So really, that's kind of explaining the rural land uses. I use the model to help me do it. I hope that helps you understand it better, Austin, but it's the Von Thunen model, and you can also Google like different ways of farming. So what are different scales? Okay, so Mary asked, what are different scales of analysis? And I actually want to explain this one. If you guys watched Amanda's Cram Pass video, this is how she did it. But I want to use Google Maps to explain it. Because honestly, I think that using like a real world example is going to be a lot better for you. So I don't really want to use my home, so I'm going to wait for a second to share my screen because it has like my current location and stuff. So I'll try to pick some other random city in the world. If you want me to pick a specific city, put it in the comments right now. If you want me to use a specific city for this example. Atlanta was first. So Mary says Atlanta, and Mary asked the question, so we do Atlanta. So here is as zoomed out as I can go. So this is the lens that I can look at. Oh, I'm sorry, my computer screen is not big enough for you guys to actually be able to see it. So, oh crap, my current location is showing up. Oh well, don't care, I'm far enough away. So, Atlanta. So I can see all the way from, like, this is the most far out zoom that I can get on Google Maps. This is the most far away scale that I can use to look at Atlanta. So I can know that Atlanta's in Georgia. So it's probably going to be somewhere right here. So if I put that little pin there, it's going to be somewhere in Georgia, maybe near Atlanta. So I know it's going to be south of Canada. It's going to be on the west side of the Atlantic Ocean. It's going to be west of Europe and Africa, north of South America. Like, I can look at that scale. I can't see anything that's actually in Atlanta, but I can kind of approximate where Atlanta is. So now I can zoom into different scale of analysis using a state. for a scale of analysis. So I can see the state of Georgia. So using this scale, I've zoomed in a little bit. You can see here where my scale is. Like I've zoomed in like maybe a quarter, maybe a third of the way, if I'm being generous. But I've clicked on Georgia on Google Maps. So with this scale of analysis, I can basically see the major highways that are in Georgia. I can see that 75 goes mainly north and south. I can see 20 goes east-west through Atlanta. I can see that the Highway 75 can take me to Macon. Highway 20 can take me to Augusta, interstates. I can see that Atlanta has a lot of interstates coming out of it. It looks like it might be the biggest city in Georgia. Maybe Savannah is the second biggest city since it has a few highways going in and out of it too. I mean, I can make these inferences based on using this scale of analysis. But then let's zoom in a little bit more. Let's just look at northern Atlanta, maybe. I mean, northern Georgia. Oh, that was zoomed in too far. I'm sorry. Give me a second. So maybe let's just look over here. I can see a few more highways with this. I can see 78 and 29, 19, 6. I can see some suburbs of Atlanta like Marietta, Alpharetta, Roswell, College Park, Douglasville. Like I can see that now there are some cities around Atlanta. So now let me just zoom into the city of Atlanta. So when I click on Atlanta in Google Maps, now I can see 75, 85, 285, the different loops and highways that go around Atlanta. And then I can also see, like right here, because I just know the colors that are on Google Maps, I can see that this is Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. And if you don't know anything about Hartsfield-Jackson Airport, it is the busiest airport in the whole United States. Like, not in the world, but it's the busiest airport in the United States. It's really big and really, really, really big. That's basically it. So now that I've zoomed in on the city of Atlanta, I'm using the scale of analysis. Now I'm just mainly looking at Atlanta. And the first thing that I see is the Georgia Aquarium on Google Maps. I know that from my previous experience in traveling to Atlanta, the Georgia Aquarium is one of the prominent and most important aquariums in the world. Tons of people come to visit a year. It's a great attraction for kids and for adults to go to. It has a 4.6 star review on Google, and it has almost 42,000 reviews. So must be a pretty popular place. But if I keep zooming in on Atlanta, if I zoom in on the downtown core area, I can see the Botanical Garden. Maybe this is a really big concert venue, the zoo, a street market. Then I can also see Georgia Tech, a really big university that's in Georgia. By the way, that's where I want to go one day. But if I keep zooming in on Atlanta, I can see more things. Like I can see, Atlanta has a subway system. Atlanta, this is the Peachtree Center station in the center of downtown. Like if I keep zooming in and zooming out, these are basically the different scales of analysis that I'm looking at something with. And the farther zoomed in I get on Google Maps, I can see specific things. Like if it will refresh, I can see buildings. Like even on Google Maps, like this is the Georgia State University Library. I can see some of the different, exhibits or some of the different book return stations, drinking fountains. I can even see bathrooms on Google Maps. Like the scales of analysis is literally, when you're thinking about it, just think of how zoomed in you are on Google Maps. So with this scale of analysis, I can see most of downtown Atlanta. Basically, all I see is Atlanta. But I can't see that library anymore. I can't see the bathroom. And if I keep zooming out, there's no way that I'm going to be able to see it. Like, as I zoom out, I can't even see the Georgia Aquarium anymore. So when I'm looking at something with different scales of analysis, it's really about how you can see things and how in-depth those things that you see are. So I really hope that answered that question. That was something kind of cool that I just wanted to answer. I'm saving all these questions from the Ask a Question section to answer next time when I think I'm streaming again next Thursday. So thank you all for coming so much. I'm so sorry that I couldn't answer all of your questions today, but I really wanted to do that FRQ, and I really wanted to make sure that you guys learn something that's going to be really important for the exam. I will definitely spend all of my time taking questions from you guys next Thursday. So please make sure you come here next Thursday at the same time. I loved working with you guys. Thanks for all the questions. And I'm going to go now. Bye. Have a great day, guys. I've already taken up 1 hour and 8 minutes of your time, and I won't take a second more.